The Motor Dream podcast is recorded on Wallamedigal land of the Eora Nation. It always was and always will be the lands of the First Nations of Australia.
This is the Motor Dream podcast.
Hello there and welcome along. This is the 10th episode of the Motor Dream podcast and it is so good to have your company once again. I'm Connor McNally and this is the podcast where my guests can dream just a little about what they like to have in their dream garage if money was no issue. I have to say that it's been quite a fun journey chatting to a lot of people who share the passion for cars. And the reaction that we've had on our socials, particularly on Instagram for the last few episodes, has been quite a pleasant surprise. So thank you so much for your support. It is absolutely appreciated. If you're new to the podcast, welcome aboard and make sure you hit the subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast and have a troll through all the previous 9 episodes that are readily available right now. So what's this podcast all about? Well, here's how it works. I tell my guests that one day they wake up and they check their phones and they suddenly discover that they receive a text to say that they need to check their bank balance. They then open their bank apps up and suddenly discover that their balance has gone to infinity. They are billionaires. As soon as they discover this newfound fortune, they get an email from this mystery benefactor that tells them that they can spend anything that they like and buy any car, bike or machine that they want. There is a catch though. They are only allowed to have 3 cars, bikes or machines in their dream garage. It sounds easy in theory, but as we have discovered in previous episodes, it is very, very difficult. You'll get to hear from drivers and riders from within the motorsport game, as well as those who work in the motoring industry, and on the odd occasion you'll hear from some prominent personalities who all share the same passion for cars and bikes as well as motoring. Now, in the Australian four-wheeled motorsport landscape, many up-and-coming drivers have serious aspirations to race in the Repco Supercars Championship, which many consider as the top echelon of the sport and on par to the AFL and the NRL. However, there are those whose aspirations go higher and further than the world of supercars. Whilst there are a select few who chase the dream to reach Formula 1, there are those who chase the dream of becoming a factory driver for a prestigious performance brand, be it Mercedes-AMG, Audi, or in this instance, Porsche. It's hard to believe that 10 years ago, Queenslander Matt Campbell caught the attention of Porsche talent scouts when he finished 4th in the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Series, contesting in a Class B spec machine where he won 3 races against more fancy teams running higher spec machinery. The Queenslander would then win Porsche Carrera Cup Australia in 2016 before relocating to Europe in 2017 as a Porsche Junior driver and competing in the Porsche Super Cup Series. He is now a full-time pilot in the World Endurance Championship, proving that being in the right place at the right time with the right amount of talent can take you places. And that is what my guest in this episode of the podcast is hoping to emulate. Courtney Prince is one of the current fast femmes of Australian motorsport who is quickly making her mark in Porsche Carrera Cup Australia. At just 22 years of age, she has packed a lot in her 6 years of professional racing. Like those before her, she graduated from karting and jumped straight into Formula Ford at the age of 14, considered by many as the breeding ground for the sport's emerging talent. She signed with Sonic Motor Racing Services, who helped teach her about racecraft and provided her with as many laps as possible in preparation for her professional debut in 2017. Courtney spent 3 years in the Australian Formula Ford Series, where she was consistently in the top 5, before making the massive jump into Porsche one-make racing and the GT3 Cup Challenge in 2021, which is known nowadays as the Porsche Michelin Sprint Challenge. And not one to shy away from racing as much as possible, she also partook in the highly competitive Aussie Racing Cars Series. Her time in both classes netted her 4th overall in both series. In 2023, she graduated into Porsche Carrera Cup Australia, where she joined Porsche Centre Melbourne Motorsport as part of a 2-car outfit which featured Supercars race winner Fabien Coulthard. Whilst the step up into more modern machinery didn't face her, the step up to becoming a full-time driver in her rookie season and competing against her peers who have all got the same goal of winning must have felt daunting. But Courtney is ready for the challenge. She loves motor racing with a passion, and the same applies for her interest in cars, which stems from growing up with car-mad parents in suburban Melbourne. So when I contacted her to ask if she'd be interested in being a guest, she gladly jumped at the chance. We recorded this interview in mid-July last year, just a day after she had contested the third round of Carrera Cup Australia in Townsville, and she was very generous with her time. So without further ado, it's a pleasure and a joy to welcome Courtney Prince to the podcast. Courtney Prince, welcome to the Motor Dream podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you on the show because you've only just come back from Townsville where you competed up there for the Carrera Cup Australia Championship, and it was, from what you told me just before we recorded, your very first time that you raced around the streets of Townsville. It must have been daunting and yet exciting at the same time.
Yeah, it's an awesome circuit. I absolutely loved it. It's my first proper street track. Is the Grand Prix, I think, is a bit of a semi one, but warming me up for Gold Coast. But I really enjoyed it. I loved it, and just lap after lap, building more and more confidence with all the bumps and curves. But yeah, it was a really good weekend. We were sitting P13 in race 2, the endurance race, which is good. And then race 3, we sadly got tagged out, but we made our way back up to, I think it was 16th after dropping back to last. So yeah, no, I felt really good at the end of the weekend.
Well, I can tell our listeners the results. You finished 17th in race 1, 15th in race 2 after being as high as 13th, as you said, and then 16th in the third and final race. So for your first time at Townsville, that's not a bad effort, and against some very, very strong competition.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the guys in there have been for multiple years doing Carrera Cup and have a lot of experience. So it's awesome to learn off of them. It's been a massive jump up from Porsche Michelin Sprint Challenge and Aussie Cars last year. But yeah, I'm loving it and just taking it each time and learning all the new tracks this year and have a real big dip at it next year.
Fantastic. What's been the biggest challenge for you this year, other than learning new circuits and obviously learning a new car? What's been the biggest challenge for you so far?
Well, Sprint Challenge is an awesome category, but I don't think nothing will prepare you for how big the step is, especially in Australia. Our competition and Europe is way, way bigger than in America and Asia and stuff like that. So I think it's an awesome category, how competitive it is. But yeah, nothing will prepare you for that step from Sprint Challenge being in top 3. Next minute you're in Carrera Cup and you're struggling and you're trying to push to get top 10. So, yeah.
Well, I look at the list of people that are in the championship. You look at people like Alex Davison, Fabian Coulthard, Chris Pither, David Wall, Luke King, who is a previous guest on this show, Dylan O'Keefe, Sam Shahin. Like, there's so many names. Rodney Jane as well, and Christian Pansioni. Those names, like, they're quality names in that championship, and they're very, very competent in their own right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's awesome how competitive it is. I think at one stage, the top 15 or 16 was separated by 3 or 4 tenths. Like, it's very competitive, but that's what makes you a better driver.
The next round of the championship is at the Bend Motorsport Park. It's a purpose-built circuit, nice, fast, free-flowing. It's long as well, and it suits Porsche racing to a T. Have you raced at the Bend before?
Yeah, I have. So I'm very excited because that will be my first round where I know the track and not rocking up on the day and learning it. So, yeah, I'm very excited about the Bend.
That's really cool. Let's talk about your career. And you've been racing since you were 14 in the car sense. Prior to that, you raced in karting. But the first time we noticed you was in Formula Ford. And that's always been a very popular breeding ground for young drivers who are coming out of karting and trying to find their way in motorsport. And you signed up with Sonic Racing, which one of the leading teams in Formula Ford, have been around, well, Sonic Motor Services, I should say. They've been around for a very long time, they've been a breeding ground for so many good drivers who have gone on to bigger and better things. And you were taken under their wing and did quite well out of that.
Yeah, so I started in go-karts when I was 8. I did that until I was 15, 16. I then went to Formula Ford. We bought a car that was hanging around, but I was too young to actually drive it. So it sat there for like a year or two. But yeah, when I was 16, I started racing in Formula Ford. So I did 3 years in National Series with Sonic. I did quite well. I think normally top 5 or 6, and they're quite cool cars to drive, but they teach you a lot because they're hard to drive, finding those last few tenths on the edge. So that definitely helped me develop as a driver as well, being alongside Mick Ritter. And then, yeah, that was able to progress to Porsche Michelin Sprint Challenge with them for a year and 2 races because of COVID. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
that's an interesting time. We won't touch on that, but I want to go back a little bit to Formula Ford. And I find it very interesting because you said you've bought a car when you were 14, and you obviously had the support of your family who have been very supportive of what you've done. Well, I find it intriguing that you couldn't drive for that year. So obviously you're in Victoria. So I take it the rules state that you have to be 16 and over to race in Victoria?
When I was 14, I kind of said to dad, I want this to be my career. So we started looking around. I'm pretty sure I was about 15 when we bought the car.
Right.
And yeah, I couldn't drive it until I was 16. So we did a little bit of testing when I was 16. I think it was, I think they've changed the rules now, but at that time you had to be 16
Yeah.
under Motorsport Australia to drive the car. Yeah.
Okay, because I know in New Zealand it's 14 years of age, and
Yeah,
you must have felt a little bit annoyed that New Zealand they were able to race at 14. You had to wait about a good year or two before you could actually get on the circuit.
Yeah. No, so we just kept doing go-karts. I did, I think, two categories in go-karts for that year or two.
Yeah.
And then yeah, hung up the go-karts and then went to Formula Ford when I was 16. So my first race was at Sandown.
And speaking of which, you're racing at Sandown in Carrera Cup. So it's a track that you know very, very well. And we know Sandown is a power circuit. So, but in Formula Ford, power doesn't mean much at all. You have to be very crafty, and you have to, as you said, it's a very technical car because despite the lack of downforce, you have to use the mechanical abilities to get that car working for you.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed my time in Formula Ford,
Yeah.
but as soon as I went into the Porsche and went to Sandown and all that, it is definitely a very fun car. You can smash those curbs and really use it. But yeah, and obviously no downforce Formula Ford is. So when I got in the Porsche the first time, one of my first races started pouring down with rain, and I was like, this thing can actually turn. So it was cool. It was very cool.
That's really cool. Well, I want to touch on some of the results, and then we'll focus on Porsche.
Yeah.
2017, rookie in Formula Ford. You did many state rounds of Victoria, and you did a couple of national series rounds, and then you did the entire Australian series in 2018-19 with Sonic Motor Racing. Did very well in that. So you've got to be very happy with what you've done. And now, as you said, you moved into the Porsche Michelin Sprint Challenge. You only did 2 races in 2020 before the pandemic hit. And then 2021 was your first serious hit out. But you also dovetailed that with Aussie racing cars, and I will touch on that. But moving into Porsche Michelin, it's obviously the previous generation of Carrera Cup car that they run. But still, those kind of cars, they're a purpose-built car. You have to really drive them according to their limits, and I guess it's a good breeding ground as well to learn your limits in those type of cars.
Yeah. Look, you got a lot of weight behind you now, and
Yeah.
they move around a bit more. Yeah, I guess the first few test days you kind of get used to it, but then it's second nature. But the
Yeah.
biggest difference was obviously the power and the weight moving around. But no, I really, as soon as I jumped in the Porsche, I was like, this is definitely my path, not open wheelers. I really enjoyed this type of racing, and this is for me. So yeah.
So what?
Never looked back.
Well, I'm surprised you say that because everyone that I've spoken to, they've either wanted to do the supercars route or they wanted to go down the route of going to Europe, try Formula One, or try and get to Formula One. Some do make it, some don't. But I find it very intriguing you've chosen the Porsche route. Can you remember the first time you got into a Porsche and drove out of the pits for the first time? What was that feeling like to drive something that had not only a lot of horsepower compared to what you had before in a Formula 4, but also had a lot of grip, not just mechanical grip, but downforce?
Yeah, no, I think my first test day was at Phillip Island, and what a track to kick off at. So definitely the aero comes big into play there, and I honestly just loved it. And coming from Formula Ford, so much grip, so much downforce for me was a awesome car to drive and be able to drive fast and on the limit because
Yeah.
I'm used to having no grip. And the reason I didn't do the Europe path or anything like that in open wheelers is at the stage of Formula Ford, we kind of looked at it, and you have to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars for probably 2-3 years. So, open wheelers did interest me, but I was like, I'm not prepared to. I can't find millions of dollars. So
Yeah.
I knew that here in Australia was definitely my path. Supercars is always still a possibility. You just have to see. But for me, in my mind, with Super 2 price compared to the Porsche price is quite different.
Yeah.
And I think at the moment, the wealth in Porsche and around it, and how great the results are from the drivers coming out of it, I think definitely is the best way to go. And from Porsche, you can go supercars or Porsche. Because if you go supercars, you can't go to Porsche. So I think it opens your doors a lot more either here or in Europe, whatever you choose to do.
Well, you've chosen quite well so far in your path with Porsche, because 2021 you did the Sprint Challenge series. You did very well. You actually placed fourth in your debut year, which is pretty impressive. And you also placed fourth in Aussie racing cars. And then you moved up even further last year. You competed another year in the Sprint series, and now this year you're in the main game in Carrera Cup. What are the few things that you found quite interesting in your 2 years that you raced in the Sprint Challenge?
Yeah, so in 21, we only had 2 rounds, Phillip Island and Sydney.
Yep.
So it was a great start of the Porsche program. And then I had a while to think about it in lockdown, what I needed to do for the next year. So, yeah, I definitely learned a lot out of it. And I think the racing is very great and hard in Porsche Michelin Sprint Challenge, but also everyone respects the cars and how much they're worth, but you still race nice and hard. I really enjoyed it, my time in there, and I think it's a great stepping stone to get a taste of it. And yeah, I've learnt a lot, and with Ritter, he's helped me obviously since day dot.
You say you have to respect the car. Obviously, you said in the beginning of the chat you could go over the curves and bang them and everything, but there's still an element where you have to respect the car. So in what way do you have to respect it?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, they're very expensive.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So yeah, in terms of curbs and that, they're obviously a bit softer than a supercar. So when you go to Gold Coast with the tire bundles, if you hit a tire bundle, you do a rad. So yeah, at Townsville and that, they're fine, the curves, but when you get the tire bundles and that, you just gotta be cautious of your rads. And the same as if you hit someone, you gotta make sure it's square, not on the side, because if you pierce one of them, you're out for the race. So I think just respecting the car, how soft they are sometimes, they're not as hard as a supercar, for example. So I think that's very important, because you don't want DNFs in races.
And you don't want to have an expensive repair bill to boot as well.
100%, yeah.
Now you're in Carrera Cup, the main game. What are there's obviously not that much difference between a Sprint Challenge car, because it's a previous generation Porsche, and the current generation Porsche. But what are the subtle differences? Because obviously you would pick up on those little bit of nuances between the two different generations.
Yeah, so the new 992 has a lot more aero. So the front of the car and the wing, if you have a good look at both of them side by side, there's a massive difference. So I noticed that straight away is the aero is quite different.
Yeah.
And therefore your braking style's a bit different, and how you carry the speed through the corner and all that is quite different. So yeah, it took me a little bit to, I guess, adjust to the new car, but now I feel completely fine and normal, like it's the old one.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're very cool, and with the more aero, you can obviously carry more speed through the corners. So I think definitely they obviously keep developing the car and making it a better car.
You were saying you've got all this, aero grip and everything. There's lack of grip with an Aussie racing car. And you did that for a good season or two and enjoyed it. You were very competitive in Aussie racing cars. And for those that don't know what Aussie racing cars are, if anyone has seen the American Legends cars, which are the half-size race cars in America, the Aussie racing cars are a derivative of that, and they are a very, very popular category. You spent your time in that series learning your craft in that as well, and did very, very well against some very good competition with some support from Tony Quinn, who's been a big pillar of support for you for a while.
Yeah, definitely. So I did that alongside Porsche Michelin Sprint Challenge. So yeah, again, I think it was 2 rounds in 21 and a full season in 22. And I got fourth in Aussie Cars and Porsche Michelin Sprint Challenge in 22, which is quite funny. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed my time in Aussie Cars. I think it was really great, especially coming out of a year of COVID, no racing, just to get seat time. And the racing in there, if anyone's watched it, is quite intense. So I think for my racecraft, it has helped me so much just racing those cars. There's a different driving style. They're obviously quite low on power. So you've got to drive it basically on the rear all the time. So they were a lot of fun, and Tony has been a great support through Aussie Cars Sprint Challenge, and now in Carrera Cup, he's still on my car as a sponsor. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
I'm very grateful to have him on board as well.
Were you shocked of how much you had to really physically drive an Aussie racing car compared to what you've been used to with the Porsche?
Yeah, I kind of reminded me of the Form 4 because that steering is quite, there's no power steering, it's quite, physical. Yeah, you have to drive them hard. There's never a moment where you're not catching a slide or anything, but you've got to drive them so hard as they're quite low speed to
Yeah.
be fast. So it's like a big go-kart, I call them.
Well, those that I have spoken to and have driven them, yeah, they speak very highly of the Aussie racing cars. What's the most fun track that you've driven in the Aussie racing car? Because I'm sure you've enjoyed all the circuits that you've raced in Porsches, but there must be one track from your time in Aussie racing cars that you absolutely enjoyed. You got out of the car and you go, wow, that was fun.
To be honest, it'd be in between Bathurst or Sandown. Because Bathurst all up the top is flat in the Aussie car, which is really cool. And then Sandown, you get to hustle it so much coming down the hill and using all the curbs. The Aussie car just loves all that stuff. So yeah, I'd probably say Sandown over Bathurst in the
Really?
car. Yeah,
Really? Wow.
yeah.
I'm surprised you say that because with Bathurst, particularly in an Aussie racing car, you need a lot of kahunas metaphorical kahunas, I mean, to be driving around. Yeah, because it is one of those tracks that, yeah, you're driving blind at some points of the circuit. And because it's so steep and you don't know when the next corner's coming up, you got to keep your wits about you. Did it feel like that for you?
Yeah, definitely. No, my first laps at Bathurst was in an Aussie car and I really enjoyed it. I really did. All up the top is awesome, flat, and then coming down the hill and they're so loose and that. But then on the straight you're in sixth gear and you're like on the rev limiter the whole time because there's no more gears left. But no, I really enjoyed Bathurst and Sandown. They'd definitely be my top two in the Aussie car that I did. We didn't, the year I did it, we didn't go to Gold Coast or Adelaide or anything like that, which I would think that would probably take over. But
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have those rounds that year.
Of course, well, being 2021, yeah, it was a bit of a shame that we couldn't go to those circuits. But you never know. There's always an opportunity to do maybe a round or two on Aussie racing cars again if the opportunity came up, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. I love those cars and love that category.
That's really cool. Since then, obviously, Porsche's taken over as your career goal. And I find it very interesting why you've chosen the Porsche pyramid, as many people call it, because there's a much bigger scope to have a career overseas or even in America when you're racing in a Porsche. And there's also a great opportunity to be recognised by Porsche and be part of their driving program. So when you look at what Matt Campbell has done, do you feel confident that the chances of you getting success within the Porsche pyramid will help you further your career?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity all around the world with Porsche, and I'm grateful to be in the pyramid here in Australia. And I think it all comes down to results. If you do good enough, you get the opportunity. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're female or male or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you get the results and do a good job and represent the brand, then you'll get opportunities.
Do you take inspiration from what Matt Campbell has done? Because we all know what he did. He did very well in the Sprint Challenge about 10 years ago. Then he went and I think he did Carrera Cup, and then he went straight across to Europe, raced in Super Cup, and now he's a factory driver in the World Endurance Championship and also an IMSA, which is a pretty cool outcome.
Yeah, definitely. He's probably one of the ones that is very recognized in Australia for using that path and doing really well in it. So I think for everyone in Carrera Cup who wants to follow his path, he's definitely someone we all look up to, definitely.
In the current crop of drivers in Carrera Cup, who's the one that you look out for in terms of inspiration?
Well, I'm still trying to find my feet in the
Yeah, of
class.
course, and of course, it is your first year. But
Yeah.
who do you turn to for inspiration? Who do you want to be at that level? In the years ahead.
Yeah, well, I think Fabian, who's now my new teammate, he's obviously had a lot of experience in supercars, still a co-driver. He's definitely someone who I work with closely and I guess am looking up to and learning off of
Yeah,
this year, as he's got a lot of track knowledge for all the tracks we go to. He's had an awesome career. Now he's still co-driving and gets to do Carrera Cup. So definitely for me, and just looking up to him and everything he's done, especially in Carrera Cup back in the day. He won in 2005, I'm pretty sure it
that's
was.
correct.
So
Yes,
he's done very well in there, and he's been able to step in the new car, and he's I think in the top 6 he was on the weekend. So he does a very good job.
does a fantastic job. Have you gone to him for any advice? Have you looked at some of his data and looked at that's where I can improve here at this corner or that corner, or just for
Yeah.
moral guidance?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got the same engineer. So Fabian and myself and our engineer Dave all work together every single weekend on how to improve the car and how to improve my driving and stuff. So yeah, he's very close with me and my progress.
That's fantastic, and it's good to see that you've got that backing as well from Fabian to help you. Guide your career. You've also got some great support too financially with BWT, who are supporting the Porsche Centre Melbourne team. We know the BWT pink is recognisable from the time that they sponsored Racing Point or whatever they were back in the day. They're now Aston Martin, but they're obviously supporting you and they're supporting Fabian, and you're obviously grateful for their support.
Yeah, for sure. I remember being young, looking at the TV, watching Super Cup and seeing the pink cars and being like, oh, they're fast, those ones. So it was pretty surreal seeing my car wrapped here in Australia with BWT and my name on the side, that's for sure. But yeah, their support's awesome. And I think it's very cool to have their cars here in Australian motorsport. I think that's a very big step for all of us here in Australia, getting European sponsors over and showing them how awesome our racing is and how competitive it is.
Well, it's not a lime green as yet, but because I know that I could see on your website it is your favourite colour. But you've had lime green cars in the past, so yeah, I'm sure we can work the lime green into the pink somewhere along the
For
line.
sure. Yeah, my helmet the last 2 years has been my fluoro green one, and then I've got a nice pink BWT one. But I actually really like the pink. The pink is very cool and it's something so different. There's not many pink cars, they stand out.
Yeah, they do stand out. Well, we saw them when they stood out in Formula One, so they stand out even now with Alpine. So that speaks volumes. Actually, I'm curious to ask you. Curious, I should say, why lime green as your favourite colour? What attracted you to that colour?
I'm not too sure to be honest. Since I was young, I've always liked green, lime green and that, and mint green. And I think as soon as I went into racing and in Formula Ford, you kind of pick your color scheme and that. I
Yeah.
was like, black and lime green looks cool. And not many people had green cars then in Formula Ford. I think I was the only one who had green. I was like, I love it, and it looks so good on the race car. Then I made my helmet green to match, and
Nice.
yeah, I think I just really like the color and it stands out on race cars. So
That's really
yeah.
cool. That's really cool. Just one more thing before we move on to the rest of the podcast. You recently done Bathurst again with the 6 hour, and it was your first time doing production car racing. So you were in an all girl team. You finished second in your class, which is fantastic for your first time in I guess, a non-Porsche or non-Aussie racing car around Mount Panorama. It's a very different discipline, isn't it, to race a standard production car around Mount Panorama, even though you've got the safety features and it's significantly different to what it is on the road. But it's a different driving style, isn't it?
For sure. I rocked up to Bathurst. I did probably about 10 laps in the car prior to it. So I hadn't done much. I just did a seat fitting, made sure I felt comfy. That was it at QR. And then I rocked up to the 6 hour. But yeah, it's a very different car. I've never, like you said, never driven a production car before. And it's got, the old H pattern with the clutch in, which I love. I love manual cars. So that was quite cool to get a bit of that element back like Formula Ford.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was cool. And there's no aero on those cars, obviously. So over the top of the mountain, it's quite understeery and stuff because of it. So you have to adapt your driving. So it's a very different driving style. And even the endurance driving style is so different. It's about survival, having consistent good times, whereas when we're racing in Porsche, it's like basically quali laps. Every lap you're trying your hardest, whereas endurance is quite different. And so it was fun, and it was good to learn how to do a bit more of an endurance driving style.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do the 6 hour again this year. So sorry, next year. I don't
no,
know.
hang on. I didn't know when the next 6 hours is, but
Yeah,
but it sounds like that kind of racing is something you would really like to do as well, alongside the Porsche program.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's cool to do that. Obviously, it's very competitive and serious, but it's also a bit of fun for us drivers who are in quite a intense category, like Carrera Cup and Supercars and that, just to do some laps and some fun racing. Obviously, we're still competitive. We're there to win, but it's just a different style of racing, which is cool to mix it up.
And you stepped on the podium at Bathurst as well, which is even better.
Yeah.
That I bet you didn't think you're going to get that at the end of the weekend.
No, definitely not. It was quite cool stepping up there and looking down at everyone. I've never ever stood on there, so yeah, it was pretty cool. Probably a moment that I won't forget. That's for sure.
That's cool. What about other endurance races? I mean, I know Bathurst might be, the end goal, like in terms of 1,000, if you want to do the 1,000. But what about other events like Nürburgring with a 24-hour, or even Le Mans with a 24-hour? Are those the kind of races that really interest you?
Endurance racing, obviously, if I had had the opportunity, I wouldn't say no to. And I haven't done much of it.
You've only just done one, so
Yeah.
but has it whetted that appetite?
Yeah, I think it's something I'd be interested in. I think still my main goal would be being a Porsche factory driver and doing Super Cup and stuff that is more individualized
Yeah.
than endurance. But I also would enjoy doing a bit of endurance racing as well. I think the both of them as a balance is cool and mixes it up.
This is the Motor Dream Podcast.
Well, I can tell you love cars. You obviously have quite an interest in it, and you obviously you smile a lot when you talk about it, which is quite evident when so far in the chat that we've had. So I want to delve a little deeper and just find out how much of a car enthusiast you really are. So I want to start off by asking, what was the first car that you remember driving when you were growing up?
That's a good question. So when I was younger at home, I live on a few acres, so I'd always used to sit on my old dad's lap and just steer, but no pedals. But I think the proper, like a properly driving a car, I think it was this car that was one of Dad's mates that was ridden off, and I used it as a paddock bomb car. And it was a Ford Courier, I think they called it.
Yes.
Very old ute. And it looked beautiful on one side, and the other side was completely wrecked because it was in a massive accident, but it still was like working. So it was a manual one, and I just drive that for days up and down the driveway just to get used to manual and clutch and all that, because I obviously didn't have my learners, I just got my learners as I was getting into Formula Ford, so I had to learn manual. So that was definitely my first car I learnt in.
Was the structural integrity of the car there, or was it very wonky, or you didn't care because you just got some miles?
You couldn't tell when you're driving it. It was just like in the middle of the two doors. You couldn't open those two doors because I think a bike hit it or something. So it was just squished in.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would have been Aren't you glad you weren't in that accident in that car? But wow,
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
cool, really cool. Do you remember the first road trip that you remember going on as a kid?
First road trip. I remember always going to Eden. My family and I would always go to Eden, which is a little town on the other side of the border in New South Wales.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
from
I'm from
Melbourne.
I'm from Sydney, so I know where Eden
Yeah,
is. Yeah. So
yeah, so always we'd go there every Christmas and Easter. We had a little cabin we'd go to, a family cabin, and just chill out on the beach there. So that was probably the first road trip I remember.
that's really cool. I would have expected it might have been a Victorian road trip, maybe going up to the snowfields or something. But Eden's really cool. So
Yeah, Eden's a very pretty place.
that's fantastic. Do you remember the first time that you had to change a tire?
Um, well, go-karts, but real tires, uh, would probably be just helping dad in the shed on some random car, probably a hot rod or something, I'd say. And then Aussie car would be the first race car. But yeah, starting go-karts with the little tires when you had to use to press down and use the like rim machine to fold it off the rim and that. I remember doing that with dad when I was young in the race trailer.
Nice, that's cool. And it's old school. Yeah, yeah. It's you have to get your hands dirty and everything. So
Yeah, and you're like pushing on it. You're like, why isn't it coming off? But yeah, I
that's
remember
cool.
that.
Actually, did that concern you getting your hands dirty, or you just didn't care? You just wanted to just immerse yourself in the whole experience.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with Aussie Car, Dad and myself did most of the running alongside Hozak, but so I'd always clean the car, help Dad put the setup in the car, wheels, tires, everything, pack the trailer. So I was quite hands-on in Aussie Car.
Yeah.
Um, Now in Porsche you have mechanics and you're just the driver. They're like, get out, you know.
Matt,
So
does it irk you a little bit? You go, oh, come on, let me touch the car. Let me work on it.
I still clean my car sometimes because I got a little bit of OCD. So if I see like a fingerprint in that, I'm like, let me clean it because guys don't have the eye for detail. But
Oh, okay. Now, okay. Now you've touched a sore point for some. You might upset a few male owners that might have a real passion to have a nice clean car.
yeah, yeah, some guys are right. I know my dad, he's he's got an earth moving business, so his trucks are insanely clean. I think that's where I get it from. That's for sure.
That's really cool. Hey, I want to touch another question within this whole range of questions here. You say you grew up with a lot of cars around with your dad. Like what kind of cars did you have in the garage when you were growing up with your dad or with your parents?
So, God, now I have to actually think. We had a lot of older cars like some Ford. We had a Ford GT, um, some hot rods and stuff. My dad used to kind of have some older American cars like F-150s and
Oh,
stuff like
nice.
that. Like the old classic ones. So yeah, there was always just cars floating around in and out quite a bit. But yeah, dad raced go-karts back in the day as well as my mum. Um, but when I was younger, everyone's like, "Did your dad, make you race?" I was like, "No, actually, complete opposite. I had a dirt bike at home and was driving that around. And I was like, Dad, I want to race this. I didn't even know that they race. They never told me." And he's like, "No, you're not racing motorbikes. That's too dangerous." He said, "If you really want to race something, I'll get you a go-kart." It still took me a year. I nagged him every day for a year to buy me a go-kart. And he finally did. And I literally have not looked back since that day. So my parents are supportive of me, but if I was like, I don't want to race, they'd be like, thank God. Like, they've put them through a lot of stress
I
and they
I bet they would have loved that if that was the case. But actually, we actually happy that you went down the 4-wheel path and the 2-wheel path because
yeah.
they're obviously two different disciplines, but the risk is much greater on a bike than there is in a car.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so glad that I didn't do that.
Although
100%.
do you like bike racing much?
I watch a bit of it, like the GP stuff, but I wouldn't say I'm a very close follower.
Okay.
Obviously, car racing, I watch every supercar race and most F1 races and that. So I more follow that stuff rather than the bikes.
I have to ask you, your dad taught you to drive, I assume.
Yeah, so in go-karts and that, it was just mum, dad, and I just doing karts. I never was with really a team, and then I kind of went with Tony Kart Australia. But yeah, dad taught me the basics of racing because he used to race, so for sure.
What about pet peeves, like on the car? Like, do you have stickers on the car, or are they a big no-no, or do you have like the air freshener or anything like that, or is that a big no-no?
Well, I'm always a clean freak, so my car is spotless and still smells brand new almost. So, um, I think a pet peeve of mine, I do have two stickers on my car, my CP Motorsport ones, but they're on my side back windows and they're black, so they kind of blend in.
Okay.
I think if I had lots of different stickers and different colors, I probably wouldn't like that because I'm very clean and sleek look.
Yeah.
So you could say lots of different colors and stickers would probably not be on my car, that's for sure.
All right. What about the worst color on a car?
Worst color? Um, well, my car's bright red, but I do love black on black cars and red and white with black. I would say it depends what car it is though, because some cars look good in colors and some look really bad in colors. I'm gonna go with that really burnt orangey color, but then the Porsche Macan looks really good in it. So it depends what color, but that orangey burnt orange would probably be my least favorite.
Okay. Well, Porsche aside, we won't include that, but if it looks bad, yeah, burnt orange on that, yeah, it does not look good at all.
Yeah, for sure.
What was the worst car that you've ever owned?
Well, quite young, so I've only ever owned two cars.
Well,
Still
actually,
current.
okay, well, I'll rephrase that then. What about the worst car that your parents have ever owned? What's the one car that they regret ever bringing home and they wanted to get rid of very quickly?
So, mum ordered, this was when I was very young,
Yeah.
when the Ford Territory was around, and she was like, I want a Ford Territory. She bought one and she ordered in silver. Now, she loved the car, but dad hated the color in the car, right? And he's a red freak. So, every car we have basically is red except for two. So, when he got it home and it got delivered, he said, no, it looks shit in silver. Not for anyone who's got a silver territory, but dad just loves red cars. And he was like, no, it's got to go. So I think they sold it like within a week or two because of the color. Not the car, the color.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's that's shocking, actually. Although I can understand why your dad was like, "No, I don't want silver. I don't want a silver car. I don't like it."
Yeah, for sure. He loves his red.
I can see that. I can see that. What about what's in your glove box right now? What do you keep in your glove box? Is it just the logbook and everything, or do you have a few tidbits here and there that you keep just in case?
I have some hair ties because I've got very long hair.
As I
um,
figured as such.
yeah, because you never know when you need one. What else do I have? Hand sanitizer and just the book. Yeah, that's don't have that much in there, and lip balm, lip balm. Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
It's a very very simplified thing. I think it's really cool. And last question: eating in cars. I think I know what the answer's going to be. Are you for it or against it? I say you're against it.
Yeah, I'm against it. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah, eating in cars. I mean, drinking's okay as long as you don't spill anything. But yeah, eating. No, I don't eat in my car. That's for sure.
Not even in a like a rental car.
Oh, rental car. Yeah, it's different. In my own car.
That's
Yeah.
what would you like? Just like a bottle of water, or would you have a coffee, or is it just like water only?
I'm a oat hot chocolate kind of girl,
Okay.
so uh, yeah, them or a smoothie after gym or water. That's all I basically drink, I think.
Hey, nothing wrong with a note hot chocolate. I
Yeah.
am a bit of a hot chocolate person myself. So that really cool, really cool. All right, Courtney Prince. Here's the reason why we got you on the podcast. You wake up one morning and you check your phone. You're probably getting up, getting ready to go to the gym, do your early morning workout, and you see on your phone a message to say check your bank balance, and you think, "Are you sure?" Anyway, you check it. You open up the bank app and it tells you that your bank balance has become infinitive, I should say. You're an Elon Musk type billionaire and you just fall about it onto the floor in disbelief. You then get an email from this mystery benefactor that says you can do whatever you like with the money and you can buy whatever car, bike or machine you want. But the caveat is you're only allowed 3 in your dream garage. So with that in mind, what is the first car, bike or machine that you would have in your dream garage, Courtney Prince?
My first car would probably be a Porsche GT3 RS, I would say.
Porsche GT3 RS. Okay. Well, I kind of figured that you would say that because you are you are a Porsche driver. So,
And I just went to the launch, must have been just about 1 or 2 months ago for the new one, and it's very nice. I can say that.
have you actually driven the road one on the road as yet, or are you just waiting for the opportunity to happen?
Well, because I'm young, I'm still on my P
Oh
plates.
yeah, because in Victoria, you're how old do you have to be before you can actually drive unrestricted?
So 22 is when you get to be off your P. So I've got not too long to go now.
Okay.
But
Oh, of course. You were born in 2001, going from your
yeah.
bio. Oh, you must be itching to get behind the wheel of GT3 RS when you do turn 22.
For sure, I can't wait to drive some pretty cool cars. The only two I've driven on the road have been a Macan, which is very nice, in the electric Taycan at Targa in Tassie a few years
Oh,
ago.
now that's really cool. The Taycan doing Targa Tasmania, that must have been a really cool experience, to be given the keys to drive in something like that, something that you're allowed to drive given your age and just absolutely enjoy yourself.
It's crazy, the launch control on them for all the stages. We started with the launch control
Yeah.
at the start, and if you're in the passenger seat, so it was Nick McBride and myself, and we'd swap at stages. Passenger seat is like a roller coaster feel, and when you're in the driver's seat, you're like, "This is so good," and the passenger's like white, and what's wrong? But yeah, no, they're very cool car to drive. They're very fun.
That's really cool. Well, having a look at the new GT3 RS that's coming out now, when you look at the acceleration, 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds. This is the GT3 RS that is, and it's rear-wheel drive, 4-litre 6-cylinder. I think we've had this in a previous episode with one of my previous guests, but the aerodynamics on that car, my goodness, they are. It's massive. Like, you could take it to a track day and it would just feel at home. It'd be the type of car that you can just turn up at a racetrack, do your laps, fang it around, and then just drive it home and go to the shops and get your shopping.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Although I don't think the GT3 RS is the kind of car you do your shopping in.
No, I don't think so. And when someone opens their door on you in the car park, I'm pretty sure you'd be pretty mad.
Oh, I'd be horrified if someone did that to my Porsche. Hey, just quickly, I want to go just touch back on the questions that I asked you before we went to the Dream Garage. You mentioned the 22 age, the restrictions that you currently have on the type of cars you're allowed to drive. Do you find that's a good thing? It helps restrict the temptation to drive a much more powerful car given your age, or do you find that's quite restrictive?
I think in general, for the average person, it's a good thing, as a lot of deaths on the road are teenagers doing crazy stuff in cars. So I honestly don't mind it. I think it's a good thing, and I think it's good to have a few more years under your belt until you're unleashed with any car, because you mature a lot more each year, especially in that age bracket. I don't mind it. I mean, from a racing background, it kind of sucks a little bit for me.
I was going to say, yeah.
You can drive these pretty cool cars at the brands you work with, but you're unable to. But I mean, yeah, such is it. Like, it's the rules, and I don't mind. I'm quite chilled about it.
You look very chilled by the sounds of it, so that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. All right, back onto the garage. What is the second car that you would have in your dream garage?
All right, so my second car that has been one of my favorite cars for a very long time is a Lamborghini Urus, so the SUV, the Lamborghini.
It's based off an Audi RS 6 QS or something, or whatever it is, but it's an SUV, and the Lamborghini Urus. That's an interesting shape. Why the Urus?
I think a lot of people either hate the shape or love the shape. But I quite like it. I think it looks very racy and sporty and quite cool. And I really like the inside and the interior with all the stitching and the suede. I really think they're cool. I would also go, I reckon black on black with that car would look pretty mean with red brakes. So
Oh, red. I think lime green with red brakes, that would work with you, I'm sure. Actually, I can tell you, it's the Audi RSQA, which is the SUV variant of what is the Lamborghini Urus. So it is a 4-litre V8, four-wheel drive, and has acceleration of 0 to 100 in 3.6 seconds. That's not bad for an SUV.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is really, really cool. Are you itching to drive one, or is it just one of those cars that you want to have in the future?
I would love to be able to drive one day. I think that would be awesome. I just need to find someone who has one.
We all do, don't we? We all do. All right. And the final car that you would have in your dream garage?
Would be something that's less practical, would be a Lamborghini Huracan.
You love your Lamborghinis, don't you? I can tell.
Yeah.
What is it about Lamborghinis that you like? Have you always been a Lamborghini girl, or has it been something that you've just fallen in love with over the time?
I think since I was young, it's either Ferrari or Lamborghini in that bracket.
Yeah.
And I've always liked the Lamborghini. I like sporty cars that look very sporty and aggressive rather than the luxury smoothness lines of the car. So yeah, something that looks aggressive and sporty is my type of car.
The Lamborghini Huracan, I mean, we see it in GT3 racing, and that's a really, really cool bit of car. And actually, I've got to say, the Huracan looks absolutely fantastic. I've got nothing against it at all. The technical specifications are just insane. 5.2 litre V10. It has an acceleration 0 to 100 of 2.9 seconds. And, oh, that sound, that V10 sound, I just love it. It's just one of those ones that you listen to it, you hear it, if you see one roar past and you go, oh yeah, I would love that. And it's so beautiful to the eye as well. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing looking car, and they sound really, really cool. I saw one a few months ago actually.
Yeah.
Parked in the city, and then when it started up, you could definitely tell what car it was.
And I love the fact too that it's an odd firing V10, so that's why it's got that unique sound. It is so different to any normal V10. It's probably different to because the Lamborghini Huracan is under the VW Audi umbrella, so it carries a lot of that technical know-how across the brands of VW and Audi. But yeah, you definitely can pick what an Audi V10 sounds like and what a Lamborghini V10 sounds like. It's very different.
Yeah, sure it is.
I love it. That is so cool. I love what you've got there. So obviously it's very supercars heavy, but I actually don't mind it at all. So Porsche GT3 RS, the Lamborghini Urus, and the Lamborghini Huracan. That's pretty impressive. Just one question though. What colour would you have those three cars?
So the Urus, I would go black on black.
Okay.
All blacked out. Probably matte black actually. I reckon the body color. The Huracan, I reckon I'd have to go lime green, some bright blue or lime green.
I figured. Would you add any pink to it?
I'd probably go black and green, to be honest.
Okay, because that's very similar to what you had when you were racing in Formula Ford.
Yeah, I really like the black with the green.
Yeah.
And then the GT3 RS. Let me think. That's a hard one. So they launched it the white with the red and black accents,
yes.
which looked really good. So I think I would have to go with that. I would either go white with the red accents or red with the black accents.
Ooh, that's a hard choice, isn't it? I think I'd go the white because the traditional white and red on the Porsche, just with the black accents, it just suits it beautifully.
I think so too. Yeah.
Nice.
Very good.
I think that's a pretty good garage. It's obviously that would sit nicely alongside with your parents' hot rods and everything. Yeah, that would be really cool. Actually, I was actually expecting, given you were telling me about your parents' garage, that like it had hot rods and that and old cars in the past, there might have been an old car in there along the line.
Yeah, Dad used to have like maybe one older car, and then he'd sell it and kind of have another one. They kind of were in and out a little bit. Now he doesn't at the moment, but yeah, I mean, I don't mind them, but I'm more of a supercar kind of person that likes the sound and going fast than fixing issues with cars that are breaking down.
You just want to just get in there and drive. I don't blame you. And plus, you race a supercar as well, a Porsche supercar, so it makes logical sense. I've had a great time enjoying talking about this with you, and congratulations on what you've done so far. I hope you do very, very well in the Porsche pyramid moving forward, and I hope, Nick, obviously this year's your learning year in Carrera Cup, but knowing you do very well in what you've done so far, and I hope that continues moving forward. So congratulations on what you've done so far, and I wish you all the very best moving forward.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
Courtney is one very talented woman who has the world ahead of her with a burgeoning talent in motorsport. Since this interview was recorded, she finished her debut season in Carrera Cup Australia in 17th place overall with 2 top 10 finishes and only 1 DNF for the year. A very impressive debut year, and she's just been confirmed by Porsche Centre Melbourne Motorsport for her second season in the class as teammate to Fabian Coulthard. We wish Courtney all the very best for the 2024 season. You can follow Courtney on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram, as well as her website at www.courtneyprince.com.au. Speaking of websites, head to the Motor Dream podcast website at themotordream.com.au, where you can find previous episodes, show notes and information on the show, as well as links to our socials with the handle The Motor Dream, which is also the hashtag. As always, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast via Apple, Spotify, Amazon and YouTube Music. And if you enjoy the podcast, please leave some feedback also and spread the word to anyone you know who loves cars. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Motor Dream podcast. So until next time, I'm Connor McNally, and as always, drive safely on the roads. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Motor Dream podcast. This series is proudly produced by Beast Productions.